Have you ever heard a story that sounds completely made up but is absolutely true? Well, we've got one for you today. It's about a soldier, an Imperial Japanese Army officer named Hiroo Onoda, whose personal war didn't stop when the rest of the world's did.
Okay, so take a look at this picture. It's from March of 1974. You see a Japanese soldier, Second Lieutenant Hiroo Onoda, and he's formally surrendering his sword. Pretty standard stuff, right? Wrong. Here's the kicker, the absolutely wild part. He's surrendering from World War II, a war that had been over for, get this, 29 years.
So that just begs the question, right? How on earth does one man's war last for 3 decades after everyone else went home?
To even begin to wrap our heads around this, we've got to rewind. Let's go all the way back to 1944, right into the chaos of the final years of the war.
Now, it's really important to understand that Hiroo Onoda wasn't just some random soldier. Not at all. He was a highly trained intelligence officer, a specialist in guerrilla warfare. Think of him as part of an elite unit. And in December of 1944, they sent him on a mission to a small but very strategic place called Lubang Island, over in the Philippines.
And his mission? It was huge. He was ordered to sabotage everything, destroy the island's airstrip, the pier, anything to stop an Allied invasion. And the main part of his orders was to hold that position at all costs. Just cause as much disruption as possible.
Okay, and this right here is the absolute key to this entire unbelievable story. His commanding officer looked him in the eye and gave him a direct, unshakable order. Under no circumstances are you to surrender, and you are not to take your own life. That one command, that sentence, would define the next 29 years of his existence. It literally became his reality.
So you have this unbreakable order. How does that translate into a lifetime of fighting a war that for the rest of the world was already over? Let's get into it.
For years and years, Onoda and the 3 soldiers left with him are just living in the jungle. Their entire world is framed by that final order. They're surviving on whatever they can find. Bananas, coconuts, sometimes they'd steal livestock. And get this, when planes would fly over and drop leaflets saying, hey, the war's over, they didn't believe them. They saw it all as clever enemy propaganda. They even got letters, actual photos from their families back home, and they dismissed them as intricate fakes. Their belief that the war was still on was so strong, it literally created a new reality for them. To them, the local police were enemy patrols, and the local farmers, they were enemy guerrillas.
And as the years turned into decades, his small group started to shrink. In 1950, one guy just couldn't take it anymore and surrendered. 4 years after that, another was killed in a shootout. And then in 1972, think about that, 1972, his very last companion was killed by police during a raid. So after more than 25 years of this, Hiroo Onoda was finally and completely alone.
All right, so if you thought the story was wild so far, this is where it gets, well, just plain bizarre. After all these official search parties, military expeditions, you name it, had all failed, the person who finally finds Onoda, it wasn't a soldier, it wasn't some government agent, nope, it was a young Japanese adventurer.
His name was Norio Suzuki, a college dropout just kind of bumming around the world. And he had this list. He famously told his friends he was going to find Lieutenant Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman, in that order. I mean, what a list. And the incredible part? After just 4 days of looking around on Lubang Island, he finds him. He actually finds Onoda.
And they actually hit it off. Suzuki and Onoda became friends right there in the jungle. But even then, even after all this time, being face to face with someone from home, Onoda's sense of duty was like a brick wall. He told Suzuki, look, I appreciate you coming, but I cannot surrender. It's impossible. Not unless I get a direct, formal order from my old commander, Major Taniguchi.
So the Japanese government had to go find this guy, Major Taniguchi. And where was he? Working in a bookstore. Totally retired. They fly this old bookseller all the way to Lubang Island, and you just have to picture this scene. He walks into the jungle and comes face to face with the soldier he sent on a mission 30 years ago. He formally reads the orders, relieving Onoda of all his duties, and only then, only when that original order was officially rescinded by the man who gave it, was Hiroo Onoda's war finally over.
Just let that sink in for a second. 29 years. For 29 years after VJ Day, after the treaties were signed, after the world moved on, Hiroo Onoda was still fighting, all because of that one last order.
So, his personal war was finally done. But in a lot of ways, the story of his legacy, that was just getting started. And it wasn't going to be some simple, straightforward hero's welcome. Not at all.
You see, it completely depended on your perspective. Back in Japan, he was treated like a national hero. He was this incredible symbol of old-world duty, loyalty, perseverance. But back on Lubang Island, the story was completely different, a much, much darker one. Because for those 29 years, Onoda and his men were responsible for the deaths of up to 30 local civilians, people they saw as the enemy. So for that community, he wasn't a hero. He was the man who terrorized their island for decades.
And Onoda himself, he really struggled to fit back in. The modern Japan he came home to was alien to him. He felt it had lost the values he thought he'd been fighting for all that time. He published an autobiography that became a bestseller, but then, just a year after coming home, he packed up and moved to Brazil, of all places, and became a cattle rancher. He did come back to Japan years later and opened up a nature school for kids, kind of passing on his survival skills in a peaceful way. He lived to be 91 years old, a man whose entire life was defined by a war he just refused to let go of.
You know, his story is just such an extreme case. It's an almost unbelievable testament to loyalty and duty, and it really forces you to think about a pretty profound question. A soldier's job is to follow orders. We all get that. But what happens when the war is over and the orders aren't?